As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner YouGov offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more. Guys, let's move on. Let's talk about hardware for a second. And this story I thought was, there's I think an interesting business conversation around this one. And the headline here is, HP launches Omen gaming products and new Victus mainstream gaming brand. And the article basically talks about how HP, I'll just read it here, is unveiling a bunch of spring gaming products that straddle its Omen brand for hardcore gamers and its new Victus brand for mainstream players who are more sensitive about prices. Now, without sort of getting too much into this announcement and what all the products are, doesn't really matter. But I think what's really interesting here is we're seeing a major gaming brand, HP has Omen, now sort of price discriminate by launching a lower cost brand.
Yep.
The question really is around, you see this in a lot of more mature industries, right? You see this in industries where the customer bases are massive and you need sort of perfect price discrimination to sort of reach everybody. And so you have multiple brands but it's the first time, or I'm sure there are other cases, but it's one of the first times sort of I've taken notice of this. And I'm curious if you guys like this move. Again, there's a question of dilution here around is it just too many brands now? It's HP, it's Omen, it's Victus. It's like, what are we talking about? And Can you really push them all? Or do you guys love this because it addresses a segment that maybe would not look at gaming hardware otherwise?
Well, I mean, I love HP doing, we read about the HyperX acquisition, right? Which was big news for HP. And I don't think I've really heard about them besides Omen too much in the space recently. I love the play for a few reasons. One, cheaper gaming peripherals. I mean, do you know how much my mouse costs? It's outrageous. And how many kids can't compete in PC, in PC esports just because they have like a really crappy mouse or a crappy keyboard. So I love that they found an entry point into this space. They thought, hey, we can actually undercut a lot of our competitors in a big way because these guys are jacking up their prices, and we'll offer, we're not going to offer mid-tier gear at high-tier prices. We're going to offer low-tier gear at mid-tier prices, and it's going to do just fine. So long as you have the LED backlights and a fancy little logo, like, it's probably going to serve the same purpose. So I think a lot of kids are going to buy it. Expect to see this in Costco, right? And grab a bundle.
So you like the expansion of brands, like seeing more brands targeting different segments of the gaming hardware buying market?
I like any company that is widening access to our industry and providing cheaper and easier, or rather, cheaper equipment for other people that otherwise couldn't afford it but want to be interested, if not for that price barrier. It's consistent with gaming as a whole, right? With games getting rid of the $60 paywall and instead going free to play with microtransactions. So I see it not exactly the same, but I see it comparable where they're serving the same type of interested user that just can't afford a $5,000 rig.
Lindsay, what's your thought on this?
My first thought is I wonder how much they're doing this to compete with Microsoft, just because Microsoft has been pushing the Surface as a gaming laptop, especially to like teens. There's that commercial that I've seen 9,000 times now comparing Apple's computer and Microsoft's computer, and the last thing is, and of course it's fast for gaming. And the big part of that is the price point is also significantly lower. So not that I think that HP would look directly at Microsoft and say like, we need to do that. But I do think that there's more people kind of getting into this space and advertising to that audience of maybe like, I don't know, teenage 13 to 25-ish, that kind of age where their parents might still be buying it, kind of thing. And I think that it's interesting to see this trend of, you know, companies specifically adding products that, while they might not be the highest quality for gaming, there's at least some element that says this is good for gaming. I think that just shows how much the industry is having an impact on how people purchase things. So it's good news for the gaming industry as a whole. And I do wonder how much HP is sort of sticking its nose out their head out. I don't know, whatever metaphor you want to use, but throwing its hat into the ring when it comes to accessible gaming laptops.
How much do you think was driven by the HyperX acquisition here? Like, you get this HyperX DNA into the business. Do you think they were the ones driving this forward? Jimmy, you mentioned that. I don't know if
Yeah, I mean,
that was coming from them, or
I think something like this probably requires more time and more thought. And so when the HyperX acquisition was announced, they were definitely already looking at other ways to penetrate this space, and that might have just been the first deal that came across their plate, or the first one that they could not afford, because they obviously have enough money, but the first one that they felt right about, right? So I don't know if that's what got their, you know, that whet their appetite, but it was probably the first in a long list of, hopefully a long list of announcements that we'll see from them. You know,
let's put our marketing hats on for a second. Lindsay, do you remember I think it was a previous live stream where we had a conversation around Booga. Remember Booga had his line?
That was the other thing I immediately thought of, was Booga's line at Fortnite and how successful it was. It was crazy successful.
Yeah.
So the two things I thought of when you showed me this were Intel's commercial and Booga's line at Five Below. And Booga's line was targeted more at the streaming aspect of it, but I do think that all peripherals, like there is an incentive to make all peripherals more accessible, whether it's for streaming or for playing.
And to be clear, HP here is going to be making not just peripherals, but like also the gaming laptops and gaming PCs and things like that. But my question was really around, do we think Victus, which is this new lower cost gaming brand for HP, do we think this works without like a Booga behind it? Or do we think we will see an influencer sort of backing this? And then the third question is, does that influencer have to be different than, or in some way, than the influencer who would be backing like an Omen, right? Like, I'm just making it up, right? Does Tim the Tatman push Omen, but then you get like a Booga for like the low cost stuff? Like, I don't know. And what does that say about the type of influencer? I'm curious how you guys think about the influencer role in this new line.
If I could take a stab, so what I've seen in traditional sports is you have guys like Shaq, who used to have a signature shoe. It was with Reebok. It was a high-end shoe. It was full price. And now, you know, Shaq is still making a killing off of his shoes. You probably haven't heard of them. Maybe a lot of our audience have. These are $20 sneakers in Target, right? These are, these are low-end, easy to afford sneakers. And Shaq is a four-time NBA, finals champion. So in gaming, I don't think you need to find a mid-tier or a micro-influencer to market a cheaper product. I think it helps, right, to have a whole army of influencers and advertisers. But honestly, I think they'll find whoever they can get that wants to rep, that likes the deal, right? This is an ad-driven, this is a revenue-driven industry. Any streamer, so I guess the question is, are they going to sacrifice potential performance for the paycheck, right?
Yeah, but so this is why the Booga one was interesting, right? You have a guy at the top of the Fortnite game, right? The best Fortnite player in the world, right? And now he's using a $5 mouse. And I always question, like, is he actually using it, right? Like, when the camera's on his face, what's actually on his desk? I don't know. But do you need a guy or girl, like I use that interchangeably, but do you need someone who is performance champion to sort of shed the stigma of low cost?
Right. I don't think they're going to get around it. I don't think you launch a low-cost gaming company and say it's just as good as our, overpriced competitors. I don't know if that's the marketing angle. I think the angle is like, hey, this is good quality, right? It's affordable, and everyone, if you don't know what to buy, look at us first, because we're a cheaper bet. I don't know if they, again though, I don't know if they go for the Boogas, the number ones, if these gamers are going to sacrifice their potential competitive edge for what probably is a lower tier product, right? I think you can still get a lot of mid-tier and still Tim the Tap Man, right? Like Tim gets even Jess Blevins on your show 2 weeks ago, was it now?
Yep.
She took shots at Tim, right? And a couple of other gamers.
I took shots at Tim, to be
okay.
fair, and she agreed. So
you're right. And she agreed.
but
right, like you have all these popular mainstream entertainers that aren't necessarily #1 in Fortnite, like Boga, but that are still, drawing massive audiences that they might not notice that much of a difference anyways.
Lindsay, before we move on, do you have any thoughts on this one?
I wonder, and my thought is I wonder who has the purchasing power in this situation, and I suspect a lot of times it's parents, or not a lot of times, that's unfair, but I do suspect that it's not like people who have their own dollars to spend would very well be influenced or could very well be influenced by a streamer. And I don't know what percentage of people that is, but for the people who do not have their own dollars to spend, and someone else is spending them for them, then I don't think the streamer matters as much. With Bugga's campaign in Five Below, I truly believe that a lot of it was successful due to him, but a lot of it might have been successful also just because it was what was available. It's not like there was another it's not like HP also put out a line at Five Below that was cheap streaming equipment, and we have anything to compare it to. So it's hard to attribute how much of that went to the name. That being said, it was, he did a great job with promotion and stuff, so I'm sure a decent amount of it did. But I think that Jimmy's right in that you could use, but I sort of disagree. I believe you could use a high end or you could use a bunch of micro influencers. I think for people who have their own spending and purchasing power, if you're really trying to go after those people, then you probably need to get into the influencer game somehow. I don't immediately have the analytics or the sense as to whether it's better to go for higher end or lower end, because I don't know who has audiences that have more purchasing power. So that would be something to look at.
I can tell you, if anyone wants to send me products to rep, I only want high-end stuff. I only use high-end accessories for my PC gaming. I will. Yeah, there you go. Does yours here, Jimmy? Does yours though? I don't know if this is gonna work.
Yeah, back it up a little. Back it up a little. No, just back it up. Oh, there we go. There we go.
Oh, the Prophet.
There you go. Does yours have your name on it? There you go. All right, guys, let's move on.
For the record, I was with Paul when he bought 10 mice at once, and I was like, what are you possibly going to do with 10 mice? And he said they were out. And I was like, how fast?
To be fair, I gave it to a bunch of people. I gave a bunch away.
You didn't say that when you were buying it, though.
That's fair, but there was a reason behind it. It wasn't just me loading up on mice. Although those were great mice.